Hello, my name's William Fellows. I'm a research director at S&P Global Market Intelligence 451 Research, and I'm responsible for the Cloud Native channel. And joining me today is Sridhar S., Vice President of Cloud and Cybersecurity at Tata Communications. Thanks for joining us, Sridhar.
Hi, William. Great to be here.
So today we're going to talk about something which has really moved to the very center of enterprise agendas now, which is cloud optimization, now sort of really talked about as FinOps, and, what options there are for organizations. We've boiled it down to what we say are the 3 L's that are key to determining the optimal cloud presence, which is latency, legacy, and legal. And what this means is that the suitability of applications and workloads to run in public cloud should really be measured against these factors. So first of all, the tolerance for the latency which will be introduced by using a public cloud for a particular workload. Now, some financial services, trading apps, HPC, manufacturing, defense, or applications with a specialized customer experience, the latency that cloud introduces may be too high versus an on-premise or in-house data center deployment. The second is, to what extent do workloads actually require the use of legacy resources such as an SQL database and so on that are not available in, or they can't be moved to the cloud and require the user to be physically in the same location as the resource. And the other factor there, of course, is the economic one about the existing legacy equipment, whether it needs to be preserved for amortization or other operational requirements, whether it's a lease or real estate, and so on. And the third is the extent to which application data is subject to specific legal obligations concerning location or access, which is referred to now really as sovereignty. So an organization can be cloud first, but there's always going to be certain applications, I think, which don't currently lend themselves to working in a cloud environment. Now, having said that, despite what we see in the market, inflation, macroeconomic issues, higher energy prices, just overall belt tightening, the spending on public cloud continues to rise. So, more often than not, it's a necessary operating expense. But the complex nature of it makes, cloud runaway cost a real and present danger now for organizations, which has really increased the focus on optimization and FinOps. Just think about, enterprises now routinely point to their cloud expense in their financial reporting. So the need for optimization, is growing. And, to offer a data point here, in our 451 research voice of the enterprise cloud hosting and managed services survey in 2022, we found over 45% of organizations reported that their public clouds costs came in over budget, and 14% of them indicated that they were spending significantly more than projected. In other words, budgets that were over 30% or greater. And the causes for this, were varied. The resource scaling, lack of governance, and over provisioning of resources, which really leaves, I think, plenty of room for optimization.
It's interesting you're saying this because some of the points that we observed during our conversations with customers pretty much resemble the key factors that you pointed. Notably, for example, the excess expenditure on one side, and to some extent, there's a wasteful expenditure. I'm paying for something which I'm anyway not consuming. So the emphasis is shifting from adopting a cloud solution to how am I going to optimize what I have and how am I going to optimize my consumption. In the process, I think one of the things that we keep hearing from the customers is, how are you going to give me a very, very purpose-built cloud? Because the general purpose is fine, but how is it going to be specifically oriented to what I am going to use in my infrastructure, in my environment? What are the resources that I would need? And how does it cater to a design? For example, I just wanted to take a point that you mentioned about protecting legacy infrastructure. So there's a lot of legacy in various large enterprises. And the days of thinking that blindly shifting to the public cloud or to just put everything outside my infrastructure, I think that phase is over. Today, the customers are looking at how can I probably elongate the life, or how can I ensure the continuity from the legacy platform and potentially re-platform later. So that's one part. The second part is about the legalities and the data retention that you talked about. The presence of so much of regulation wherever, nobody's going to escape the impact of regulation. And so the need for us to keep our data in the right place or keep it retrievable. Where are you going to store your data? How are you going to utilize? And what's the storage design? So it is lending itself to customization of the last mile for various customers at different levels. So this is broadly the kind of conversation that we're talking. And a few cases we've also observed where customers are saying, you know what, I'm probably not getting the benefit of, I probably don't need the bells and whistles of the cloud in any manner, so I'll probably put it back into my own data center. So looking at either a data center of their own or even a co-located data center is coming back into the mix today in customer conversations. So broadly, pretty much in agreement with what you mentioned on the point, William.
As organizations move data to the cloud, the governance, security and risk stakes, they really sort of skyrocket. And I guess the increased technical complexity and the demand for ever faster time to market and value and so on has created this kind of perfect storm of complexity for all the sort of teams that are now involved, because obviously it's not just IT. We have DevSecOps, we have FinOps, we have the business teams as well. And as these sort of workloads are, they can that they can be configured now to sort of run here, there, and everywhere. The specific location of the resources, whether it's on premise, whether it's in the public cloud or the edge, that's becoming less important than the challenge of, as you rightly sort of pointed out, integrating those applications and resources in such a way that it provides continues to provide a sort of consistent experience across the IT estate. I think what we think is that cloud governance and policy management guardrails are really a best practice that can deliver organizations sort of let's say cross estate visibility into their activity, which enables them to sort of take control, if you like. And these typically use automation platforms that allow the operator to see into any environment. They can see all of the changes taking place in a self-service fashion. And I think the outcome or the result then should be, the delivery of a single button approach for managing, each of these supported environments with a consolidated view for management. And this will allow, automated control over things like what we know are service drift, to correct processes and services, rule-based remediation and intervention, and overall it will mean better governance and control. So, I guess to put a finer point on it, we need tools that at the moment are broader than those offered by the hyperscalers and many of the independents in the market. In other words, there's a great opportunity here for vendors who can help with this whole governance approach, Sridhar.
Absolutely. I think very, very well said, William. I think the summary was spot on. In fact, one of the things that now we are emphasizing is this thing about how security is a shared responsibility. Because while an organization may have a CISO and a security team, doesn't mean that it rests only with them. It's a lot of user behavior on one side, and on the other side, the way their IT sprawl today exists, you've got to have a data center provider, a SaaS application vendor, and a platform provider, and themselves jointly being responsible for what is the kind of security architecture and how are they going to follow whatever the guidelines and the governance processes that have been defined. So I think that's really making a big change today, this awareness and the need to constantly keep educating the end user, everything from a not opening a phishing email all the way up to not opening applications from certain devices or not sharing files across different environments. So that's one part. The second thing is there's no substitute to defining your own security architecture from the scratch. Now, every organization will have the risk and a vulnerability which is different from the others. As an example, an organization which is naturally going to be working with more number of suppliers, being in a manufacturing industry, for example, has got more security holes. And today, CISOs are beginning to have a say in terms of how do you onboard a partner and what is the sort of security, information security declaration that they've got to provide. And so those conversations are beginning to happen today. So building your own cloud controls from the scratch, and finally aligning an application to the risk tolerance. What is the kind of risk strategy for the respective application, and how would you allow the companies to adjust those risk levels is also becoming important depending on whether it touches a consumer or it's an application looking internally and stuff like that. So I think the diversity in terms of the applications and the residency of the data for those applications is really making this thing complex. But suffice to say that we just need to reorient ourselves into not assuming things and redefining from the scratch.
So you put your finger on it, Sridhar, how to join these things up and how to, evaluate the hyperscalers. I think, the thing is whether they can deliver the right mix of cost and performance and security to meet the need. I think organizations should consider reducing cloud complexity by choosing providers that can reduce the friction of adoption, for example. So a proof of concept deployment on each of the clouds under consideration will provide initial evaluation. But because there are so many personas and different lines of business involved, it's important that everyone's enfranchised to ensure there's sort of complete visibility. So to that end, organizations with successful cloud deployments that we've seen, they create a cloud center of excellence or other some kind of cross-organization cloud-specific construct that has overall, responsibility for cloud strategy, and this can coordinate the procurement of resources, from across the organization. Also, hyperscalers, they offer enormous discounts to customers willing to make commitments for purchasing cloud resources over a 3-year period. 70% in the case of Azure and 50% in the case of AWS. The issue is that in order to qualify for the discount, enterprises need to know how much they will need, which requires then a sort of holistic approach to demand and capacity planning that goes beyond, ordinary reactive and cost control approaches. So to enjoy long-term performance, security and availability benefits, organizations, they have to take a macro sort of economic view of their cloud requirements and really plan accordingly.
Yeah, thanks for stating that, William, because we noticed the same. For the first time, I dare say that the discussion around cost optimization and FinOps is probably gaining more importance than even security in conversations, because the wastage of expenditure, the non-consumption is definitely becoming important. And as a provider, it puts that much more responsibility on us to deliver that aspect of what the customer is expecting. That's one part. Secondly, on the security front as well, the ability to provide visibility across the devices, the identities, the applications, and the overall virtual machine sprawl, and be able to provide the governance across this framework and ensure that it is compliant becomes an important responsibility for us as a provider. So these are two important vectors that we see when we put in the cloud and security together. But also for a provider like Tatacom, from the vantage point where we sit, since we are traditionally a network player, we have a very strong visibility on the network. So when you look at a network plus a cloud plus security and add to it the other areas that we also provide services on, whether it is communication and collaboration or IoT, etc., it just provides us a stronger visibility and a much wider perspective on the consumption that the customer is going to drive. And we can look at it all the way from the base design of the network and the infrastructure, all the way up to the consumption and the user experience as they begin to consume resources on the cloud. So that provides us a unique opportunity to be of more value to the customers in bringing about this balance that you talked about. So thanks for bringing it, William. It was nice to exchange views and broadly consistent across the customer landscape. Thank you, William.
Thanks very much for joining us today, Sridhar. And for our audience, if you want more information about cloud optimization and the FinOps market, please do visit 451research.com. Thank you very much.